Well, in my last video, you saw that Kevin installed this bumper on my Jeep along with the cube lights in each of the cutouts here. Today, he is going to wire them to a switch in the front. Let me show you where they're going to be wired. First, this is the switch that he's going to be installing. It's the Voswitch or Voswitch, however it's pronounced. That is going right over here. It's going to be installed in this cubby area right here. It should have a nice custom look and create a lot of switches for me. So here's the switch plate here, and it comes with stickers for your labels that go on these little white areas here. And it's going to fit right in here like this. So now I just have to figure out what I'm going to put on each of the switches and where I want them located, you know, when I go to reach for them. But other than that, my job's going to be easy. I know Kevin's anxious to get started, so I'm going to let him have it.
So as Cindy said, I'm going to start installing the Voswitch. It's the 12 switch panel, and as she showed you, it goes in the cubby behind the shifter. And then this block here will go on the passenger side over by the battery. This is your main power wire that's going to go to the battery. This is the wire that's going to run inside the Jeep and connect to the actual switch panel. And then they give you another wire that you can connect into your fuse panel on the Jeep to an accessory fuse that will only allow this to turn on when the ignition is on, and this is what they provide to help with that. So you'd pull your accessory fuse out, put it into that bottom slot, push this back in, and then wire this to this red wire right here. Then they also give you a bunch of stickers that you can put on the switch panel there, so you can identify what type of switch you're switching. And they also give you some blanks that if you don't have anything on those switches yet, they can just be black and they won't necessarily light up. Give you a bunch of zip ties, and then they give you a bunch of these connectors that you can use to connect whatever you're switching into these power ports right there, and they got them all labeled nice, switch 1 through 12. And then on the opposite side, they have the ground bus bar where you can wire all the grounds into. And then they also provide a wire for the ground. Now the nice thing about this is it seems as if it's completely waterproof. You run these wires into where they go into. You tighten this down and it'll cinch around them, which should keep water out of there. The other thing is all these little white plugs right here. So if you're not using a particular inlet, they're plugged off, so water can't get in there that way either. The bottom of the lid has a nice seal on it, so when you put it on and snap those clips down, it seals it nice and tight. The other thing that's nice about this switch panel is every one of these relays can be replaced. So if one of them goes bad, you can replace it. They provide you with a 30 amp fuse for each switch. Now, I don't think you're going to want to keep the 30 amp fuse in there depending on what you're running to the switch. For example, we have a 14 gauge wire running to Cindy's lights in the back, which is what we're going to end up switching through this. And 14 gauge, I believe, is 15 amp. So that 30 amp isn't really going to protect that wire in any way. So we're going to want to pull out a 30 amp fuse and replace it with a 15 amp fuse to protect that wire a little better. But it is nice that you can fuse each individual switch with whatever amperage you need based on the type of wire you're running to that switch. So I just wanted to give you an example of the waterproofing on that Voswitch. This is an aux beam switch, which is what I went with in my Jeep, and I'm happy with it. It works very well, but I don't think it's quite as waterproof as what that Voswitch is. So you can see all the wires just come up through the bottom here through a hole, and there's nothing there really keeping from water or moisture or anything really getting in there. Now this one you can change each individual fuse if a fuse goes bad, and you can change the size based on the size wire you have running to the switch or to whatever accessory you're running. But it doesn't have the replaceable relays. This does have the built-in relays, but they're not replaceable. So if something goes bad in the switch, whatever relay goes bad, then that switch is basically probably not going to work anymore. This one does come with a little fuse holder and some extra fuse on the bottom of the cover, but there's no seal to seal the lid or keep any kind of moisture out that way. But like I said, I am happy with this switch. It works well for me. I just think the Voswitch might be a little bit better in terms of waterproofing or weatherproofing. And then just to show you real quick, this is the aux beam panel that I have. It's a 8 gang switch panel, which works well for me. I actually still have one available. Then I just mounted it using a phone holder on my accessory bar, which works well for me, but I do like the fact that the switch that she's going to be installing is very custom and goes into the cubby behind the shifter. So I just wanted to show you that to give you an idea of the different types of switches that are on the market. And there's a lot of them out there that you can choose from. I don't know that any of them are bad. They all probably do their job and work well. I just think the one that Cindy chose is actually going to work really well for her needs. It's going to install right here over the battery, and it's going to utilize an existing bolt here that's in the fender, and then a hole right over here that's already has threads, and I believe they provide a bolt that's going to go down in there. Now you can see we have our kill switch for the winch right there that's kind of in the way. So that's the first thing I need to work on, is actually removing that and then coming up with a different position for this that's going to work with the switch panel in this position. So these bolts right here are 10 millimeter, and I'm just going to loosen them up and take them off for right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and disconnect her winch and get this kill switch out of the way, and then put the panel in. And then after I do that, I'll figure out where I can remount this, that it's going to work well for her and she can reach it and everything. So before I mount the power module, I'm going to go ahead and connect the ground wire that they provided to the ground bus bar. And I noticed on one side they have a small ring terminal, and on the other side they have a larger one. This is the side I'm going to run to the battery. This side right here I'm going to run to the bottom side of this bus bar right there, and then I'll be able to run that over to the battery. So that's really solid now that it's bolted in, and feels really good. The thing I need to do now is figure out where I'm going to install her kill switch for her winch. I was hoping it would fit right in here somewhere, and it may still fit there. I've just got to look and see. I'll probably have to shorten the wire going into it, put a new lug on it, and then from there run it over to the battery. So that's what I'm going to do now, is just kind of take some time to figure out the best place to put this so she can still have her kill switch on the winch.
So while Kevin is hooking up that switch, I thought I would work on a little project. See how this light is white behind it? I think that would look a lot better if it were painted black. It would blend a lot more and you would see it a lot less. So I'm going to work on that. Need a good cleaning. Now that was worth the effort because it looks so much better. Little details.
So it does look like her kill switch for the winch is going to fit right here next to it. I did modify this bracket a little bit. I am going to have to shorten this wire that comes from the winch to tie into there, and then I'll run it from the switch over to the battery. So I'm going to take this back apart, repaint this bracket so it's nice and neat. I shortened her power cable that goes to the winch. I also shortened the ground cable a little bit just to kind of get rid of some of the wire that was clumped up in there. And then the end I cut off of her power cable, I'm going to use and run it underneath here over to where the battery terminal is. I just ran out of lugs, so I have to order that. And as soon as that comes in, I can put an end on there, get her kill switch put in, and her winch will be all hooked back up. So now I can actually start running this wire into the Jeep. Now I know everybody that has a JL knows about the grommet that goes through the firewall, and that's where I'm going to run this through. So I'm going to work on that. Probably ain't going to show a lot of it because there are a lot of videos out there that show how people run the wire through there. So I'm going to get that taken care of, and then I'll come back.
So I've got to decide where I'm going to put this switch so I can put the sticker on. So I think they number them 1 through 6, 7 through 12. And so I just got to decide, do I want those lights here? Do I want them side to side, or do I want them top to bottom? So they give you a sticker for the cube lights. And I have 2 of these sheets, so I have 2 of those stickers. I am going to need 2 of them. One is for a momentum switch, will allow me to change between flashing or the amber versus white lights, that sort of thing. And I think that I'm going to put them top to bottom. So like the main switch here and then the momentum switch down below. Just going to clean these off good with some alcohol so it'll stick nice. These stickers fit perfectly, so you don't have to worry about it being off-centered or anything. There we go. Just a little tip. If you get it on there unevenly and want to take it off, you almost cannot do so. I mean, it sticks really well. I don't think these are going to peel up over time either. In the corner of this one here, I bent it a little bit, so I was trying to readjust it and that didn't happen. They give you a lot of these blank ones too, which I'll be using because I only have a limited number of things that I need to put on switches right now. All right. As you can see, right now I'll only have 4 lights showing, and eventually I'll add other things for these switches here. I can't see myself having 12 different things, but it's nice to know I have the option. Here's a little hint for you guys of what's to come later this year. I will be getting front and rear lockers. Like I said, that will be later in the year. And I decided to just go ahead and put those stickers on there since I know I'm going to be getting them. Some of the things I foresee myself getting in the future is maybe an onboard air compressor. So they have that sticker. And like some trail lights, either for the bumper or up here at the top somewhere. That's the thing about Jeeps, you know, there's just so many options of things you can do. It's good that I'm getting to see how I'm using it and what I'm gonna need or want before I add them. But yeah, this is gonna be a nice addition.
So the wire that comes from the power module and goes into the Jeep to the actual switch panel, I have routed up here to the firewall, and I ran it through these little channels here all the way across to the other side of the Jeep. And then it goes into that grommet right there that goes into the firewall. And then it comes inside the Jeep here. And I'll route it over there to where the switch panel is going to go. But before I do that, I thought I'd show you real quick. I got the kill switch in for the winch. And then over here is where that wire is going to run to. As soon as those lugs come in, I can finish that up. And then I ran the main power for the power module underneath next to the battery. Comes out over here, and that'll get connected to the battery. And then the ground for the ignition switching, I ran over to a ground that's on the side of the fender over here. And then this wire right here will go into the fuse panel for the Jeep, and it'll get connected into an accessory fused connection. So next what I need to do is remove this panel right here, and it should be fairly easy to do. I have removed it before, and I think coming from this side is usually the easiest. And it always sounds like you're going to break it, but it actually comes out fairly easy. There we go. And I'm going to disconnect these connections right here, just so I can move this out of my way. Put that aside. And the next thing I need to do is remove this screw right here. We'll pull this panel out, and then that's how we're going to get to this cubby right here and be able to remove that and then install this switch panel in there. And to remove this right here, you can use either a Phillips head or a 7mm socket. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect some of these plugs here so I can get to this a lot easier. Then on the back side of this for this cubby, it looks like there are 7 of these 5.5mm hex screws. We're going to want to save this hardware because we're going to reuse it. So there's the cubby right there, removed. And here's the new switch panel that's going to go in. And I just want to make sure that I'm putting this the correct way. And I guess it can only go one way, so you probably don't have to worry about putting it in upside down. That looks like it fits pretty well. And it looks like all the mounting holes for all the different places line up really well. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mounted in here, and I'll come back when that's done. So I have the switch panel installed now, and it looks pretty good. Nice custom fit. Now what I'm going to work on is taking this wire that comes from the power module and feeding up through the dash over to where this panel is so I can connect it to the switch panel. And the nice thing is Voswitch gives you plenty of zip ties, so I can get it up there nice and neat. And my plan is to run it up here along these wires, where that yellow one is. You can see it right there. So I'm going to zip tie it to those and then run it over to that end over there. So I got the wire going up underneath the dash, under the steering wheel, and now I'm going to feed it through this area here. And this thing right here is super handy. If you guys don't have one of these, if you do any kind of wiring, this thing you can feed it through, and then you can actually grab the wire and then pull it through. I use this thing all the time, and it's really helpful. All right. I have a couple of zip ties under here that I need to cut still, but the rest of this excess wire I'm just going to kind of bundle up and leave in this cavity back here. I'll use one of the zip ties they provided. So now this is ready to be connected into here. And there is a notch right here that needs to go into that notch on there. And then they provide this cap right here that can screw onto there. So now I can hook the connections back up for this panel, put it back in place, and then we'll put the panel that goes above that back in place as well. All right, so I got everything back together in here. I just need to put this kick panel back on that's under here. I just want to make sure that everything seems to be working properly. Looks like everything's hooked up properly, so I'll put the kick panel back on, and then I'll go back under the hood and we'll hook up the Voswitch to power. So I decided to run the main power for the power module over to a terminal right here that's in the fuse block. All these right here are hot, and I feel like the battery terminal is going to start getting a bunch of wires hooked to it. So rather than do that, I ran it to that one right there. And these are just M6 threads. So I found an M6 nut and washer and connected it right there. Next, I'm going to run the ignition wire over to an accessory fuse. So everything out here should be hooked up now, except for the wires going to the lights in the back. I'll do that in a minute. But now I want to go inside and make sure that the Voswitch panel turns on okay. Okay, so now that I have the ignition wire hooked into an accessory, this shouldn't turn on right now. And it did. All right, so I'm going to have to take a look and figure out why that's turning on. I'll be right back. Okay, that was an easy fix. Instructions. Should probably read them more often. But underneath there, this is the wire that goes for the key switch. And you can see these little toggles right here. The number 1 is up, number 2 is down. That's default ignition control disabled. Over here, ignition control is enabled. Both the toggles are up. So I did that. I switched them. They're both up. And now this doesn't turn on. I'm going to go ahead and hit the ignition on the Jeep. And it's going to beep, but that's fine. And now I should be able to turn this on. Perfect. And then if I turn this off, the switch turned off with the ignition. Everything looks like it's working correctly. I'm going to go hook up the lights in the back now. So Cindy wanted those connected to switch 2 and to switch 8. So right here is switch 2 and over here is switch 8. So I'm going to run the red one in here to switch 2. That's going to be the main power that turns the lights on and off. And then the yellow one is going to go to switch 8. And that's going to be like a mode switch. And Cindy will set that switch to a momentary switch. And each time she hits that, it'll cycle through the different modes that those lights have, like switching to amber or to white or flashing, that sort of thing. And then the ground right here, I'm going to run around over to this bus bar in the back right here and ground it to that. Voswitch does provide you with these little connectors that you can use to put underneath the screw of the switch connector. So I'm going to go ahead and use those. Alright, so I have the rear lights hooked up. I've got the main power for the lights going into switch 2 and the momentary switch for the lights going into switch 8. And the other thing is I switched the fuses out to 15 amp fuse because we're running 14 gauge wire and they have 30 amp fuses in every one of them. So I just wanted to make sure I switched those out so we can protect that wire a little better. So now I should be able to turn the accessory on. And it looks like we had those lights on because I was testing them and it looks like they're still on. So let's go back and look. So that's good. They're on white right now. But as I press this momentary switch, those lights will change. So now they should be on amber. And there you can see the lights have changed to amber. So each time you hit that momentary switch, these lights will change the function. And there's 6 different modes, I believe. And the next one's going to be amber and white. And then it goes to flashing white. And then flashing amber. And then it flashes both. And then back to the white. So if I hit this again, it'll go to the amber and white. And if I hit it again, it goes to flashing white. That'll be flashing amber. And that should be flashing white and amber alternating. And there you can see they're flashing alternating amber and white. So now if I hit the momentum switch again, they'll go back to white.
All right. Now the fun part, I get to play with the switches finally. Okay, so it's already on. It comes on with the ignition. I think Kevin probably told you he connected it that way. So as you saw, the momentary switch has already been set so that Kevin could show you those lights. Eventually, when I have the lockers set up, I'll be able to turn the lockers on and off, front or back, with those switches. And I'll eventually have things connected to these switches. Maybe not all of them. That's a lot of switches. But now what I get to do is decide, do I want it on green, red, orange? What color? Actually, I can't set it to orange because it's automatically set to orange when on. So that's why that one's a different color. It's like an amber color, actually. But these that are blue, I can change to, like, I think I'm going to change them to green. To set the color, it says you want to make sure you have the switch panel off. Then you're going to press the power button and hold it for 3 seconds. And I should see it. Right now it's on blue. And now I should be able to just scroll through the different colors. Red, green. See, I like the green. I'm going to go ahead and scroll through. Back to blue. So I guess that color, what is that color? Oh, that's the white. Red and green. Green's what I wanted on. So to increase the brightness, I would hit number 6 button over here. These last two buttons are what we're using. I can kind of look at them as an up and down button, but as I hit this, it should get brighter, which I think it's as bright as it's supposed to be right now. And then on the 12th button, this last one, should reduce it. And it is getting dimmer. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'm going to see just how dim it'll get. I think that's as dim as it'll go. Which I think I want to keep them pretty dim. And then to save your settings, you press this for 3 seconds and it should be set. So something to note is that every one of these switches can be set to 6 different functions. Depending on your needs, according to this, they can be used for either just an on-off switch or momentary, like we set the one at, flash, quick flash, flash and strobe, combo, or strobe. So that's pretty cool. The other thing is that you can set one as like your master switch, so that you have, like, let's say you have like your outside lights. Let's say I wanted to put my outside lights onto each individual light set to come onto a different switch. I could then have a master switch that will make those 3 switches come on with just pushing the master switch, which could be nice in some situations, but I'm not hooking those lights up to this. But it's an option, just to give you an example. I'm excited to finally have that done, to finally have my bumper and the lights all done. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and got something from it. If you're looking at the Voswitch or Voswitch, I still don't know how it's pronounced, but if you're interested in that switch, I hope this gave you some clarity on how it installs and what its functions are. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.